Hi everyone, my name is Nick, and today we're going to talk about plants that have nearly black foliage. This goes without saying, but a lot of plants are green, so it's pretty exciting when you get to grow something that's not a green plant. So today we're going to be talking about plants that have very dark foliage, which is very spooky. So the first one we're going to talk about today is the one that you are probably expecting to hear about. So we're going to go ahead and get out of the way. This is the Zamioculcas zammiifolia raven, or the raven ZZ plant, which is more commonly even known as the black-leaved ZZ plant, because these leaves, they are straight up black. They look like someone just took a ZZ plant and they just sprayed black spray paint all over this plant. So I just think that that is really something in itself. So raven is a very fitting name, as a raven is a black bird, as I'm sure you know. It really just is such a perfect plant. It's a very spooky ZZ plant. So I'm really into that. It's really easy if you've grown a ZZ plant before. They are the most forgiving houseplant. I always say about ZZ plants, if you water it more than you pay your rent, it's too much. And that rule still applies to this ZZ Raven right here. It is even hanging out in a 4-inch terracotta pot, which is very small. It dries out very fast, and I still can't even tell you when is the last time I watered this plant, and it is totally fine. None of the stems are puckered or anything like that. So a very easy plant to care for. Really, the only way you can kill your ZZ plant is to water it more than it wants to be watered. So I'd say any more than 2 weeks in a standard potting mix is probably going to be too much, and it might start to yellow and rot down the line. So do be mindful there, but a really, really easy forgiving houseplant. And fortunately, the price on these Raven ZZs has been plummeting because I think they've been being mass produced. So that is something that is nice. So yeah, black leaf ZZ plant is definitely the first one we're going to talk about today. So let's talk about some more out there interesting ones. So this next one we're going to talk about, the second plant for today, is this very lovely Syngonium. So this is Syngonium erythrophyllum, and this is a cultivar, Llano Carti Rd. And this has such incredible dark leaves. They really are nearly black. But if I flip this plant around, you can see the wonderful shade of wine red that's hiding on the backside of these leaves. So I just think it's another really like Halloween-y plant right here it's very gothic. It's got this nice dark foliage on the front, and then the nice purple reddish foliage on the back. So it's really quite wonderful, and a very excellent trailing houseplant, as you can see. So I actually have this sitting on a table, but I think I'm going to have to consider hanging this guy up in the near future and maybe giving it a little bit of a fancier pot, because I think this thing is just a little too underrated right now. But this is such a wonderful plant. I've only had this for maybe a year, probably a little pushing that at this point. I'm not positive, but maybe 2 years. But this is, yeah, a plant that I am head over heels for, and I think it deserves a little bit more attention. Definitely a very underrated houseplant. I think Syngoniums in general are very underrated plants that I don't think have really taken the market by storm yet. So this next one is a little bit more of a common plant. This is a Pepperomia caparata, and I believe this is the Burgundy Ripple variety. And this one, as you can see, has some just really dark foliage. That's the theme for this. If I flip it around, it has more of that burgundy color that the namesake is describing, but the front side of this plant really does have some nice dark foliage. So this would do really well in like a nice terrarium if you're looking for a nice pop of dark foliage. This is definitely an excellent option for that. But yeah, a really common, I wouldn't necessarily say easy to grow. I think this is the only Pepperomia caparata I currently have in my possession, because I don't do that well with them, but this one's been doing quite well for me, growing in actually a yogurt container, which is a terracotta yogurt container, funny enough, but it works as a pot, and this Pepperomia seems to really like it. I do have another Pepperomia I want to talk about today too that does have also nearly black foliage, a little bit more silver, but I think you guys will get the gist. This is Peperomia turboensis, a little bit more of a collector Pepperomia, but I really love the black and silver foliage that these plants have. It's really quite lovely. You can see, I'm kind of holding it weird because this whole plant's kind of creeped over the side of this pot. I have this growing inside of a glass enclosure, so it's kind of just creeping up the side of the glass, and you can see how there's a lot of aerial roots going on, as there's a lot of humidity inside the enclosure where I keep it. So this plant seems to be very well suited in that environment, but yeah, I'm always willing to take it out for a video for you guys, but this is just such a fun out there Peperomia. Peperomias have very similar care across the board, where you want to give them higher humidity, but you don't want to overwater them. The easiest way to kill your Peperomias is to overwater them and rot them, but I think some of them, like this turboensis, can be a little bit more particular when it comes to having higher humidity, as they are more like terrarium or vivarium species, while this Pepperomia caparata is a little bit more suitable as a houseplant, as it is cultivated to be grown as such, while this Pepperomia turboensis is a little less cultivated, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, a really interesting Pepperomia. If you are growing any more funky Pepperomias, or you want to grow some more funky Pepperomias, I'd probably recommend trying them out in an enclosure, because some of them really do want to be in higher humidity. But a plus side to growing them inside an enclosure is that they practically take care of themselves. This Pepperomia turboensis, I probably water it like every 2 months, as it really just keeps itself well hydrated inside of the enclosure. And because of that, they don't seem to rot, which I think is, you know, nice. But I'm not drowning this plant. I really am just giving it a light watering, and just that condensation on the inside of the glass really does seem to keep this plant going. So just a little tidbit of information I wanted to share with you guys. And next up, I believe this is our 5th plant for today. This is a really, really dark leaf plant. This is a Pilea Repens. And this thing is so fuzzy and so corrugated. This is actually sitting on the windowsill right behind one of our couches. And my cat, Muffin, likes to sit on the ledge of that couch. And this thing is just completely riddled in cat hair. I was sitting at the counter for a couple of minutes before filming this, before I decided that it's just the way this plant's going to be for this video, and probably the rest of its life, because, you know, Muffin sits right there and she rubs up against it, and her fur just gets in it. I'm sure you can even just see the fur in these leaves as I'm holding it up. I think it's just something a little silly about this plant, you know? But I have a black cat, so she just must really love this dark leaf foliage, because it really just matches her fur. So yeah, it's a really lovely plant. I'm really obsessed with it. It's got some nice greener leaves as it starts to fade back, so it's kind of a nice like gradient, let's say, where it's more dark black foliage, where it kind of gets back to your more standard green foliage down in the center. It's quite nice, and if this plant does start to trail over, I'm sure it might have a really nice kind of like gradient or ombre pattern to it. So we'll see how this grows. I've only been growing this one for maybe like 6 to 8 months at this point, so we're still getting acclimated, but you can see it is a very fitting plant, a very gothic, dark-leaved plant, so that really does fit for today's vibe. And it's really not a difficult plant to take care of. I really enjoy Pilea for that reason. Pilea are very fun houseplants that really aren't that demanding when it comes to attention or looks, I will admit, but that's something I kind of like about them. I really do like my plants just to kind of blend in and just like match them with a nice pot that really does look well. So I have it with this nice cream pot to go with its dark foliage. So yeah, something I'm just really quite fond of myself. And I have this philodendron right here. So this is called a Philodendron Bloody Mary. And I actually grow this guy directly next to my Syngonium erythrophyllum, Llano Carti Rd, because I think the leaves look so similar, and I think it's just so wonderful. So it's kind of like, you know, playing matchmaker, which I like to do with my plants sometimes, and my pots. I think it's just a way to do it, you know what I mean? But this is just a very darkly philodendron. It almost kind of looks like a pink princess without the variegation in a sense, but it's just got more thicker leaves. They're a little bit more spade-shaped, a little bit more elongated than a pink princess. I haven't clearly had this one for that long because it still hasn't really done very much to me, but I really enjoy the way it's looking in this red pot. So it's just a very dark, Halloween-y, spooky plant that's just really one to try out if you like philodendrons, because I know a lot of our philodendrons are green and a lot of people like variegated philodendrons or pink philodendrons. So this is just a really nice dark leaf philodendron to try out. Once again, don't really have that much to share with you about it because, yeah, hasn't really done much for me. But another philodendron that I have that I think I can share a little bit more information about today is this Philodendron Black Cardinal. And I think this is a perfect example for today because it's literally got black in the name, because the leaves, they're pretty darn close to black, I would say. And it does, once again, fade back to green. I think that's kind of something that you might notice with all of these dark foliage plants, that they do over time really fade back to green. It is a plant. They do have chlorophyll. You know, it's going to happen. It's nonetheless still quite incredible. So this is a hybrid philodendron, so it's very closely let's say, to like a Philodendron Rojo Congo or a Philodendron Prince of Orange or Philodendron Moonlight. So they grow in kind of, they call it self-heading. So they kind of stay upright and they grow in a circle similar to like an aloe, let's say, if you're familiar with that, or an agave, and how they grow in kind of like a pattern. Versus this Philodendron Bloody Mary right here is one that's going to kind of climb. It's going to climb. It's going to grow in like with a stem that grows upright and could use a moss pole to grow. Just to kind of give you guys, show you a difference between these two plants, because I think they do look very similar. But so this is one that's going to climb or vine, while this is one that's going to grow kind of more like a bush. So this is one that would be great to grow on the floor over time, where the Bloody Mary might be one that's more of a hanging plant. But I really do adore how dark these leaves come in. And I've had some better luck with this one as far as the hybrids go. I've tried to grow some of those other ones like the Moonlight and the Prince of Orange, and I don't know what it is. I don't have very good luck with them. I think I've talked about them in the past on like plants I'm killing videos and stuff, and how they're just like, I find them so difficult. But this black cardinal has really stuck it out for me, which is funny because these used to go for a pretty penny. I don't think they are expensive whatsoever anymore, but I found it at a farmer's market a while back for a really good price, and I was kind of shocked because at the time, once again, it was slightly a hot commodity, but it's not really the most popular philodendron whatsoever, so really not one that's going to cost you money at all. But it's still a really cool plant. I think I really enjoy the look of it. Really, it's just a philodendron, you know what I mean? It's just a nice philodendron with some dark foliage. Okay, gotta reach down here for this plant, which this almost looks like a stretch, me calling this nearly black, but the ones that I get in stock at the store are much darker than the one I have in my home, let's put it that way. So if you were to find this plant at a store, I think you'd be a little bit more convinced than what I have to offer here today. But it's not this fern that's coming out of this pot. You would be like, oh my gosh, of course that's very green. I'm talking about the other plant that's in here, so it's going to be very difficult for me to show you guys. But it's this guy right here. So this is a Pellionia. This is Pellionia. I think it's Pellionia Repens pulchra, or it might just be Pellionia pulchra. But this is a really excellent terrarium plant, and it's also a really underrated trailing plant. I really put this in every single terrarium that I make at work because it just does so well in a terrarium setting that it just overwhelms me when I put one little piece in there. And as you can see, or if I think I'm being real, I put 3 little pieces in there, but you can see how there's much more than 3 little pieces in this terrarium at this point. I think there's about like 7 or 8 vines trailing around at this point. So, you know, a little small, tiny, slightly, you could say, underwhelming terrarium, but I think that the Pellionia really does do a number on the way that it's creeping around the pot. So this is one that I think really just does stand out so well in a terrarium setting. It really does catch the eye because of its foliage pattern as well as its dark foliage. It's just so wonderful and really does perform incredibly well in a terrarium, but as I said, it really does also perform very well as a hanging basket plant. So got to keep it a little bit more moist, but at the same time, Pellionias don't seem to really mind underwatering. They're just not going to grow as fast. It might look a little bit shriveled, but they are very, very forgiving houseplants. So if you've never tried growing a Pellionia before and you see one, I highly recommend giving them a go because I think they're really, really underrated houseplants that really do deserve some more attention. I think this one and the Syngonium erythrophyllum are the 2 plants in this video I'm going to say really do deserve a little bit more attention because I just don't think they're getting it, and they're really wonderful plants. So I'm sure you could find them both if you do a little bit of digging, but yeah, some really excellent plants. I have 2 more to share with you guys today. So this one is definitely the most common plant that I'm going to talk about today. So this is a Ficus elastica Burgundy, or the Burgundy rubber tree. This is, I would say, like one of the original houseplants. I feel like everybody's mother had this plant in their home at some point, and they might still have it unless they've killed it, like my mom did, apparently. So yeah, this is a really reliable houseplant. Of course, ficus, if you've grown them, they're known to be like creatures of habit as they're getting acclimated to your home, but once you've had them for a couple of years, they really don't seem to mind a little mistreatment. So just a plant that really does need to acclimate to your home to get it really chugging along. I've always heard the adage about plants: the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, the third year they leap, and I think that is something that really these Ficus elastica abide by. So something to really keep in mind. But it's such an excellent house plant with these just leafy leaves and dark foliage. It's very thick. It's one that I feel like a lot of people want to grow when they're first starting out their houseplant collection because it really just has that classic houseplant look that we are looking for. There are a bunch of different varieties of Ficus elastica, but this one in particular, I'd say, is the most common one, and it's the one that has the darkest foliage, which I think is just so great. So it really does stand out, I would say, in houseplant stores as such a dark-leaved plant. If you're just in like a normal selection with just like some pothos and some spider plants and sansevierias, these Ficus elasticas are really going to stand out for their dark foliage. So it is something we really do appreciate. This one I keep on my kitchen counter, which is like maybe 6 feet away from a southern-facing window. And I honestly don't think about this plant very much because I really had to dust the life out of this plant, and probably there's still some leaves that are quite dusty, as you can see, because I really just don't pay that much attention to it. It's really just a very set and forget houseplant. As I said, sometimes they really do need to acclimate to your home. I've had some issues with them in the past, but this one in particular has been just very easygoing. So a really excellent, very easy to find, very, very inexpensive dark-leaved houseplant that I would absolutely recommend to anybody who's looking to grow some plants in their home. And I have one more plant to talk about today. This is an Alocasia Reginula black velvet. So this is a very dark, very velvety leaved Alocasia. And if you are familiar with Alocasia, they are usually beasts of a houseplant. They are, or a landscape plant. They're very often grown outside on people's porches and even in their window boxes, which looks quite monstrous, but it's very wonderful seeing such large plants. But this is the little baby Alocasia right here. This is a Alocasia Reginula black velvet. I don't know if there's a more common name for this plant than that, but it's a very showy Alocasia, and I am personally not a huge fan of Alocasia simply because of their behavior. They are not the most well-behaved plants in the home. They do have quite the temperament, but these plants, I got them in stock at work and they were just so beautiful. I figured, why not go ahead and give it a go? I actually have one of these growing inside my home, which is this one, and another one growing down in my courtyard, which I grow a bunch of my more outdoor suited houseplants for the summertime. And I probably should have grabbed that one for this video because that one is looking a lot better than this one. But you know what? I figured I'd show this one so you can more expect what you might get in your home, which is just a little bit more of a wimpy houseplant. Doesn't look bad whatsoever. It's just a little, has a little less juice in it, I'd say. But nonetheless, a really beautiful plant. I let this one dry out. I mean, mind you, I've only had this for a couple of months, so I'm still getting to know how to care for this plant. But I let it dry out roughly 50%, and then I go ahead and give it a nice watering, and then I usually just let it sit in the saucer of water. I usually don't mind dumping it out because I know that Alocasias like to sit a little bit more moist, but they don't want to be wet, mind you. Like I said, I do let them dry out roughly 50%, but I am no expert on Alocasia care. You shouldn't listen to me on that. I am just telling you what I'm doing for this guy right here. The one out in my courtyard that's getting higher humidity and it's getting all that rainwater, that one is doing a lot better than this guy. So yeah, I will definitely be bringing that one in and maybe pushing this one out or potting them together. But yeah, I think that's gonna about do for today's video, talking about 10 plants with nearly black foliage. I think this little goth gardening spooky plants is a lot of fun. Like I said, most of our plants are green. A lot of people are into these variegated plants, these pink plants. But I think plants with dark foliage just need a little bit more love because I think they're so excellent, and Halloween's just a small way around the corner, so we can get a little spooky, you know what I mean? Alright, thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at Foliage, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day!